We want to tell a hidden story, a story with mystery and all sorts of conundrums contained in it. And that story is concerned with disasters. The world's very aware of disasters because they're growing in scale and in the numbers of people they affect and in the cost, the human losses and economic losses of these disasters. People are well aware of the huge earthquakes, tsunamis, huge epidemics sometimes sweeping the entire globe and causing death and suffering for hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of people. And yet behind this very visible story is a hidden secret story. It's a story of another kind of disaster that doesn't ever hit the headlines. It's the kind of disasters that affect people the world over from day to day to week, what we call everyday disasters. And the point about these is that although they're poorly documented, reported, very little is done to address them, the well-respected expert in disaster reduction, Professor Mark Pelling at King's College, says that these disasters are the elephant in the room, that nearly 90% of losses are caused by these small-scale everyday disasters rather than the large-scale disasters. Why is this? To try and answer these questions, we have to enter a strange upside-down world. It's a world where there's far less knowledge and far less resources expended, and yet there are far more losses. It's a world where the knowledge about these disasters, the nature of them, their effects and the possibilities to address them is held not by technocrats and scientists and experts, but typically by ordinary people. Ordinary people who actually experience the complicated effects of seasonal floods, of extreme weather events, which are increasing in intensity, of the factors that magnify the impact of these disasters, poor building planning, economic deprivation, conflict, corruption, violence, many different factors, not only environmental but social, economic and political, combined as a cocktail to create these hidden disasters which in this upside down world have more effect on people than the mega disasters. And another thing about them is that left and unaddressed, these disasters tend to accumulate until they create the intense disasters that we see. Things like urban migration, urban overdevelopment are driven by people trying to escape everyday disasters and in turn concentrating risk in other situations. We call the people at the front line who have the knowledge about these everyday heroes, because not only do they know about them, they're often the only people left to do something about them. So they have a lot of energy, knowledge and experience within the resources they've got to address everyday disasters. When we look at the world of development and humanitarian assistance, we see progressively greater sums being poured into situations all over the world, but there's often frustration that very little changes. One of the things that might make a difference is to actually properly understand and properly address these everyday disasters. A network of over 700 organisations dotted around the world is trying to do exactly this. It's a network concerned with disaster reduction. Its member organisations are often tiny, 5 or 6 people working in a city or in villages in many of the countries most affected by disasters. Having done a lot of work in large-scale social surveying to see what's going on, they've now turned their attention to understanding from the people at the front line what everyday disasters are and how they can be addressed. So they're no longer surveying with questionnaires, they're going and having a conversation with these people, and this conversation's happening many times over, already several thousand of them in South America, and the results are being drawn together to develop a picture of what is actually affecting people, what are the biggest threats they face, what actions they can take, and what barriers they face because of things that are happening at other levels, choices that are made globally, nationally, politically, economically. There's a hidden world out there of everyday disasters, but if we choose to just stick with the headlines and miss the small print, very little is going to change in this upside down world. This film explores that hidden world and the upside down possibilities for changing it.